Hey there, this is Emily and Bernie from Third Place Works, where we help co-working professionals with tailored cohorts and one-on-one consulting. Our proven frameworks can help you get focused, stay accountable, and see real results. Want to learn more? Check out the show notes for all the details on how to join us and take your co-working business to the next level. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Coworking Values Podcast. I'm Emily Breeder, and today I'm talking with Kristina Schneider of Cobot. Kristina, where in the world are you today?
Hey, so nice to be on the podcast. I am recording from Berlin today in Germany.
And tell me a bit about Cobot for anyone who has never heard of it before.
Yeah, sure. So Cobot is a co-working management software, which means we're building apps to help space managers manage their members, organize all their bookings, basically run all the business logic of the space in the software. And this came into the world because for over a decade we were running our own co-working and event space. And we all have a background in design and development. So we naturally wanted to automate things and started to build a product for ourselves. And quickly in Berlin, in the co-working community, other spaces adopted it. And today it's used in over 80 countries.
That's amazing. Now, as the people listening will know, this is the accessibility, diversity, inclusion track of the podcast of the Co-working Values. So how does Cobot work with those values?
Yeah, so as your listeners might know, we've been part of the conversation for quite a while. We've been part of the idea movement, have making commitments there. And I think that's always been a very natural thing for us because we're so born in terms of company, team culture, and the people we're still working with today out of the co-working movement that from the beginning we were looking to work in inclusive and welcoming environments. And over the years have really tried to implement as welcoming and inclusive culture in our team as possible. And naturally that also applied to how we're building products, how we think about our users, who we want to be on the platform, and how easy to make that for as many people as possible, really.
How long have you been involved with Cobot?
For over a decade by now. So I've been with Cobot since the very first release of the product, which is roughly 12 years ago.
Do you have any personal stories of why these kinds of values mean a lot to you?
Yeah, sure. So as for many people, I myself have experience with accessibility issues in my family. So family members, friends as well, who face challenges every day. And that is just a very clear motivation to understand that the world can be so much easier for people to access if we just consider that from the beginning before designing anything, really. Also my capacity as events organizer. So I've been organizing various conferences, but also meetups for a long time. You just encounter big audiences and a variety of needs. And really learn a lot about how easy it is to overlook this and then just make an entire event impossible to attend for the humans out there. So yeah, I think it's been a long learning process and still is for myself to really see behind my own personal abilities and understand how to design experiences, be it in terms of software, events, communities, so that more people can participate.
Now, in the past on this podcast, we've talked a lot about space design and different ways to make it inclusive and welcoming, but how does that translate to a digital experience?
Yeah. I think it translates quite easily. So assuming that people who run co-working spaces have experiences in designing the spaces and we're very familiar with the physical barriers that people might face, that applies just as much to a screen. So a screen, well, it's not a barrier that you cannot that you have to walk against that doesn't have stairs or anything. But for example, for people with visual impairments, a screen or an app that doesn't provide legible contrast is a barrier. They might not be able to read what you're trying to convey. They might not be able to access your content. Or let's talk about people who have to use assistive technology like screen readers to access and navigate a website. So if your website is not optimized for that, and that's actually, it's quite hard to do and requires quite a lot of testing, then these people might not be able to learn about your products, or even if they learn about it, might not be able to complete a checkout, to buy it, to buy a day pass, to sign up for membership, or to book a tour in your space.
Can you tell me a bit about the approach that you take towards that, towards co-working?
You mean co-working in the sense of how we're doing it today as a company, or how I think about co-working?
The challenges and the accessibility features of the kind of software you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. So because we are building on the web platform, so the main Cobot app is a web app that can be used in any browser. By default, we have a really good starting point. That means we're really quite accessible already. And since all our co-founders, myself and my two co-founders, have a background in web development, we understand quite well how to build websites and web apps in an accessible way, how to serve as many users as possible. And we also see the benefits on how that makes the product easier to maintain. And something that we have been emphasizing, especially in the last few months, where we're now a bit more actively preparing for upcoming EU regulations on accessibility. We invested in team training, so making sure everyone on the product and development team, but also on the support team, everyone who publishes content really, is trained in accessibility. And I think what works well is just growing empathy in the team, growing this understanding of the different kinds of user needs our product might meet.
Earlier, you mentioned some regulations that are changing in Europe. Can you tell me a bit about those?
Yeah, so there's the European Accessibility Act, which is a directive from the European Union that has been around for a while, but now it's actually coming into enforcement in June of next year. So from June 28 on, it will be enforced, which has to be done by the EU countries. So every country has to define the precise rollout of the law and how it will be audited for and eventually be fined if you're not compliant. So I think now is really the time to start auditing your own tech stack for compliance with this law. And this law does not even, it's not limited to digital products, really. What it aims to do is make all kinds of products, including digital products, in the EU accessible to people with any kind of physical, sensory, or cognitive disabilities.
Now, in the United States, we've had the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, for quite some time, and it's really wonderful to see that this is actually coming into enforcement. Now, when it comes to the product development that you are actually doing, how does that affect you?
Yeah. Maybe as you bring up the American Disability Act, actually, I think what's important to clarify is that also in the EU for quite a while, on public institution, governments, universities, and so on, there has been a much stronger regulation and enforcement for a while. But the European Accessibility Act that will now come into enforcement really is about the private sector. And that's why it's also becoming very important for co-working spaces. So who this applies to is any business that basically has more than 10 employees or makes more than $1 million in revenue per year, which might still not apply to a lot of co-working spaces. But if they are using tools produced by larger companies or provided by larger companies, they still have to adhere and be compliant with the European Accessibility Act. So that means the software we have to provide, and for pretty much all of our clients, we have to provide a software that is accessible. So the European Accessibility Act does not define all the details. That's up to the countries how to implement it, but they all refer to the same standard, which is the WCAG. I do think it's occasionally referred to as the WCAG because that acronym is a tongue twister, so I'll refer to it as the WCAG standard as well. And that really outlines what needs to be done.
Can you tell me some of the business advantages that there are into using these kinds of applications?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So in general, well, we obviously want to encourage to automate your co-working space. Our own experience is that our human energy is spent much better on building your community and building real connections, having conversations with the people in your space, and the bookkeeping, the management of resources, and so on can really be done better by a software. And we do know many of our spaces build and maintain their own websites, their own branding, and not often have the resources or the in-house team to provide a fully professionally developed website that's optimized for accessibility. And in any case, they'll probably use a software like ours or another booking tool to get the products, the day passes, the memberships to the clients. So really, if they are not accessible, even if we ignore whether you might be facing fines in half a year when the law is going to be enforced, you're just missing out on reaching people. So there's numbers of 20-25% of people having some sort of disability often cited. And if you break that down to how many customers you're missing out on, that really has an impact. So even from a business standpoint, it's just a smart decision to make your digital offering really accessible.
Now, I think you mentioned the idea earlier, the idea handbook. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah. In general, the conversations as part of the IDEA project, where you commit to contribute to a certain inclusion and diversity goal.
How are you introduced to the IDEA project?
Yeah, I think through conversations with Bernie, also Janine, for quite some time. So we've been running into each other on various co-working events, and I was asked to contribute a bit on the idea handbook, which was a really great experience to be able to provide some insight and also provide feedback. Also Cobot has been participating in calls of the idea project. And one idea that came out of this was for this quarter that we're focused a lot on accessibility, and we're also trying to provide resources, write some guidelines, provide some infographics for our audience that make it a bit easier for co-working spaces to navigate these technical challenges and get a much more easy to follow to-do list.
Now, for everyone listening, the IDEA handbook, the acronym stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. We've mentioned it many times on the podcast before, and you can find a link to it in the description below. Kristina, what are some of the ways that this can help future-proof your business, your co-working business?
Yeah. Well, if your digital tools are accessible following the WCAG standard, then you're ready if you will be audited in the future. And that is something that can happen starting from the middle of 2025 when the law comes into enforcement. And that really protects you of being fined. And apart from being compliant, apart from opening your or widening your audience, your potential customers by reaching more people, I also think it's just the right thing to do. By building for accessibility, you're also sending the message that you honestly care about the people working from your space and the people you want to attract to join your community. And I think that's key for any co-working business.
What is Cobot's plans for the future?
So for our accessibility project right now, what we're really doing is have an all-team effort on doing some shared training, um, teaching everyone on the team how to use a screen reader, for example, which everyone can do with their built-in tools on the computer, but few people have tried out who are not dependent on it. And just by ensuring that your entire team has a really good understanding of accessibility standards and a really good empathy for users, we're making sure that everything we design, write, publish, and build into our product will be accessible. We've also reviewed our quality assurance processes, our release processes to have extra checks, automated as well as manual, to match accessibility guidelines. And a specific feature that we'll be redesigning completely is our color customization. Because really one of the key problems for people with visual impairments, which does not only mean blind people or people with a complete loss of vision, but really older people who don't have perfect vision anymore. And as Cobot is a white label software, so that means our spaces can apply their brand, their logo, but also their colors to our application. That can easily mess up the fine-tuned contrasts and the tested contrast that we have, and then become inaccessible again. So there we're designing something completely new that will offer a light mode and a dark mode, and some warnings for the space admins when they apply their branding to make sure that it really stays within a contrast ratio that is accessible to readers.
Do you have any recommendations of further reading or resources related to this topic?
Yeah, sure. So as part of our commitment to the IDEA project of providing resources, we have published the first blog post that gives some very practical tips on how co-working spaces can achieve online accessibility. And we try to keep it low tech, so it's I think it's quite easy to understand and follow along. And one of the first recommendations actually is talk to your technical providers. Make sure they have this topic on their radar, which I think is an easy step that everyone can do. And my second recommendation is really go to the source, read through the implementation of the European Accessibility Act in your country. For Germany, I mean, we're recording in English. I don't want to focus too much on the German audience, but I know the German institutions have actually provided quite accessible content around the topic as well, and I'm sure that's true for other countries as well. So I really recommend read through the European Accessibility Act and find your country's specifics.
You mentioned before the call that you have two other co-founders, Thilo and Alex.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how you got together, how you decided to do this?
Yeah, sure. Through co-working, actually. So my co-founders Alex and Thilo had a software development agency in Berlin. And when I first moved to Berlin in 2008, so quite a while ago, I was a web development design freelancer, and I was looking for a place to work from. And co-working did not really exist yet as a term. And through a friend of a friend, I got introduced to them, and they had a larger office where other freelancers were sharing some desks. So I started to work from there, and it was kind of like co-working without having the name yet. And very soon they needed some design help. They became a client of mine, and that's really how our relationship and eventually friendship started.
Kristina, I really appreciate your time today. Do you have anything to add, or maybe tell us where we can find you online?
Yeah, I think these days the best place to connect with me is LinkedIn. So if you look for my name, which is quite common, but if you look for my name together with Cobot, you should find me there. And I'm really happy to connect, meet co-working spaces, software developers, and also exchange about accessibility product development. Always find me through the Cobot blog. Give us feedback there if you have specific questions. I'd also love to jump in and answer those.
For everyone listening, you can see all the notes and links for everything we talked about in the show description. Thanks so much, Kristina.
Thank you so much. It was great being on the show.